So excellent. We're already into questions from the audience, and that's what we want. And questions that you have about how it engages you, or just things that you want to understand better. I think you've done a wonderful job, and thank you for helping us understand in more depth what the paradigm is that we're talking about. So let's open it up, and we plan to spend a fair amount of time. It's your show. We have microphones. Let's see if we need them. So let's just start. Who's got the first question?
Perhaps we can talk a little about B2B and how these notions apply to B2B, because we heard about Salesforce and extending beyond an enterprise into some social.
Can everybody hear that?
Are there
Okay.
good examples?
B2B platforms?
Well, I think a lot of this conversation has been around B2C, and I think one of the questions, and it's one of the questions that I've had, and Adrian and I have discussed a bit, and as well as Phil, is how does this paradigm apply to B2B?
I think you need to change the distribution. Genentech's a great example. They have an internal app store, right? They're basically saying we want people to be able to just click and download an app that's there on their mobile device or their iPad. That's, I think, something we're going to see more of in the future.
But that's still business to their, it's internal to the business. Enterprise to enterprise is most of B2B. How does that work?
I think these all apply to B2B. I think there is, as we've seen, for example, with Salesforce, there's taking some consumer-oriented concepts like social media and bringing them back into B2B kind of environments and applying those to B2B environments. But also there's clear B2B examples. I mean, FedEx, that's a lot of B2B. They sell a lot to B2B. There are other examples in all of these quadrants that fit there. Banking, telco services, ERP is a great example of time on autopilot. A lot of times they get embedded in the corporation and trying to get them out, it's kind of hard to get them out because the time and effort it would take to replace that. And so that's an example of where you want to expand and build out your ecosystem so that you're further embedding into those business processes and becoming that maintenance renewal kind of company. So you want to add on with partners that will enable you to either gain more maintenance revenue or ensure that the disruption to your platform is not going to change within that customer environment. So that's a good example.
Yeah, when we released Chatter, so it's an internal social network, right? So sales could talk to service, you could talk to the CEO, et cetera. What happened was the number one new feature request was, how do I talk outside? How do I talk to my customers? How do I talk to my partners? How do we integrate that? Wow, did that become quite a big buzz within our company, and a huge privacy issue, because you're talking about customer data and your chatter around that, and then trying to integrate that to someone else's environment. And we pride ourselves so much on privacy and security and everything else. So it was a huge challenge for the engineering guys, and they went right at it. And sure enough, I think actually this release, we have chatter-to-chatter or org-to-org communications, what we call it. So companies can talk to other companies and interact with that social network. And so that's how now you can begin to converse socially between business to business. And thankfully it worked out pretty well, but we didn't even think about it when we first came out with Chatter. We just thought people needed to talk within the company, and sure enough, you're right on, which is B2B, how do I communicate? So,
just curious, were you one of those that raised your hand when Chatter was asked? Do you use Chatter?
We use Chatter. We also use PRM.
Yeah.
Another
right, partner relationship management.
Andy will help a lot there too.
I bring this up in the context of B2B, and if you just step back a bit, what I see happening with respect to these platforms, which yes, they are consumer driven or they are individually driven, is that there is a birth of new business processes underway. So, for example, if you look at how new service innovation is done, you can no longer say that I need to have a gateway-based process to incubate, to get into a beta mode, and then get into a limited trial launch mode. You're wrong. By the time you get it through that gateway process, your service is probably going to be replicated or copied or something just by circumstance by another player in the market, either direct competitor or emerging competitor. Instead, you put the concept, whether it's through chatter, which is a reach out, which is saying, do we need to add more functionality in our hire to retire process? And you can put that out to your own firm, like ADP could do such a thing, or you can put it out into ADP can put it out into their base of clients, right? They have a monster base of clients, and they can begin to incorporate not just simple feedback, but robust feedback. And I think that this is where the birth of processes is coming. NPD, new product development, new service development. There will be a much greater collaboration of how you ingest this information for the sake of having standard services, shared services that businesses will provide. And the number one conversation we have with some of the company, speaking in terms of PwC, the number one conversation we have from players who are mature in their market is, how do I organize my information, stratify what I want to expose to my value chain, and take I'll call it a gravitas role around customer data analytics. You can look in the life science players, the pharmas are doing so. Procter & Gamble, as they have proclaimed for now 4 years running that they intend to morph into an entirely digital enterprise, they are saying we're going to vertically integrate from a consumer products player into a retail information provider. The retailers are doing the same thing, but they're saying we're just going to, whoever does it best, does it best. In the end, it's about supply chain throughput, right? So this is why I wanted to make sure that there is a very strong business-to-business strategy orientation coming around.
And that I actually think Microsoft's original customer was the developer, and they did a fabulous job creating a network and a social space for developers with MSDN, with .NET, and
In the
we're
custom
talking
development
about
world,
next generation
absolutely,
platforms,
yeah.
but they
I'd agree
did a
with
good
that.
job with theirs.
They had a really good target towards developers. Yeah.